Listen up, because these places don't ask, they take. Two rotting American scars, centuries deep, both still starving in the dark. First, a 1724 colonial house squatting on the jagged Massachusetts coast. It doesn't creak, it screams. It breathes through the walls, slams doors like gunshots, and devours every family that dares sleep inside it. 300 years. Not one owner walked out alive. They all fed it. Second Holy Rest Cemetery, buried in the black West Virginia pines since 1798. A pit where they dumped women they called witches, stoned, cursed, covered with crosses to keep evil down. Except the evil never left. At midnight, those crosses flip, the dirt splits, and the dead rise just enough to whisper mangled scripture and force-feed you visions of your exact death, frame by bloody frame. One traps you in walls that chew souls, and the other traps you in your own skull until your heart stops. Both know your name already. Both are awake tonight. No running, no praying, no mercy. The house hungers first. Then the grave finishes what's left. Buckle the fuck in. We start inside the mouth. Starry one, the house that hungers. Sarah and Mike rolled up in their rented U-Haul on a gray May afternoon, windows down, laughing like kids who'd just robbed a bank. 4,000 square feet, Mike kept saying, slapping the steering wheel. Ocean view, original 1724 beams, 180 flat, 180. Sarah leaned her head out into the salt wind and shouted, "We stole history, baby." They had driven straight from Brooklyn, tired of the noise, the rent, the feeling that life was slipping through their fingers like subway turnstiles. This was supposed to be the reset, the big, stupid, beautiful reset. The real estate agent had met them at the gate with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She kept calling it the old Kane place, like the name tasted sour. When Mike asked why it was so cheap, she only said, "The locals have stories." Then she handed over the keys and left so fast her tires kicked up gravel. That first night they sat on the wide front porch with cheap champagne, watching the Atlantic turn silver under the moon. The house loomed behind them. 3 stories of weathered cedar, black shutters, and a widow's walk that looked like it was waiting for someone who would never come home. Inside, the grandfather clock in the hallway ticked too loud, but they didn't care. They were New Yorkers. They knew better than superstition. At 3:33 a.m., the clock struck 13. The sound was deep, wrong, like a church bell underwater. Mike sat up first. Must be broken. Then the slamming started. Every door in the house, front, back, pantry, attic hatch, even the tiny crawl space door under the stairs, slammed in perfect rhythm. Bam, 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 bam. 10 beats, like a heartbeat 10 times too big for any human chest. The whole house shook with it. Sarah's teeth chattered. Mike grabbed a baseball bat from the moving boxes and crept downstairs. Every door stood wide open again, innocent as church doors on Sunday. The clock read 3:33 exactly. They laughed about it the next morning over coffee. "Old houses settle," Mike said, kissing her forehead. Sarah didn't answer. She was staring at the ceiling where, just before dawn, she had heard a child's wet giggle drifting down from the empty nursery on the 3rd floor. Day 2 began with the handprint, a small, perfect, child-sized handprint in fresh blood on the white kitchen wall, right beside the antique cast-iron sink. Sarah screamed so loud the gulls outside took off in a panic. Mike scrubbed it with bleach until his knuckles bled. The red came off, but that night the giggles returned, closer now, right outside their bedroom door. Sarah, Mike. The names stretched like taffy, then snapped into something angry. At dawn, they found toys on the staircase that had never been in the house, an eyeless wooden doll with yarn hair and a tin soldier missing its head. Both were damp, as if they'd been dragged up from the sea. By day 5, Mike had stopped pretending. He ripped up the parlor floorboards with a crowbar, sweat pouring down his face. Underneath, layer after layer of yellowed newspapers, perfectly preserved. 1752. Family of 7 burned alive while screaming for the door that would not open. 1831. Mother found hanged from the nursery beam. Her 3 children never seen again. And 1907. Last owners starved to death in a house full of food. Pantry still stocked when search party arrived. Every single family since 1724 had died inside these walls. Not one had sold. Not one had escaped. That night, the house began to breathe. At 3:33, the walls swelled outward like lungs taking in air, then contracted with a low, wet exhale that smelled of rot and old blood. Sarah woke to the feeling of fingers, long, bony, freezing, tracing slow circles down her spine beneath the sheets. She screamed and slapped the lamp on. The bed was empty beside her, but the mirror across the room showed a tall shadow in a colonial coat standing right behind her, smiling with too many teeth. They tried to leave on day 9. Bags packed at sunrise, keys in hand. They stepped toward the front door and walked straight into the upstairs hallway, and they spun around. The back door now opened into the kitchen. Every window they ran to showed only perfect black nothing. No ocean, no sky, no trees. The house had folded reality like a paper bag. They were meat in its stomach. Night 10 was when the siphoning began. Sarah woke feeling her pulse weaken, as if something was sipping through her ribs with a straw. Mike's skin had gone the color of old newspaper overnight. His eyes looked hollow, like someone had scooped out the light behind them. "It's taken bites," he rasped, "small ones, so we rot slow." They found the heart of the house at 3:33 exactly. Mike kicked through a false brick wall in the basement they'd never noticed before. Behind it was a tiny room, no bigger than a coffin on its end. One wooden chair bolted to the floor. Every inch of wall, ceiling, and floor was carved with names. Thousands of them, layer upon layer since 1724. Some names were scratched so deep the wood had split. Others were fresh, still oozing sap like blood. At the very bottom, newest cuts, still white. Sarah Elizabeth Kane, Michael Thomas Reed, May 2025. The house spoke then, not with words, with pressure. The air turned thick as tar in their lungs. Visions slammed into their minds like hammer blows. A colonial family dragged screaming into splitting floorboards, while the house laughed with their children's voices. A mother in 1831 dangling from the nursery beam, her feet still kicking, as invisible hands pulled her children up the chimney like smoke. Lovers in 1907 crushed between closing walls until their bones popped like wet kindling. It wasn't haunted. It was hunger, built from 3 centuries of grief, blood, and endless New England winters. It took fear first, then life, then memories. Then it spat the bones into the sea. Sarah clawed at the plaster until her fingernails tore off in bloody strips. Mike just sat on the cold floor, already fading, staring at nothing. At 3:33, the final inner door, the one that had never been there before, yawned open. Not to the outside. Deeper. Into the throat. 2 weeks later, the for sale sign went back up in the front yard. Fresh photos on the real estate website. A smiling young couple from Boston, arms around each other on the same porch, ocean sparkling behind them. The price had dropped again. $165,000 this time. The house waits, patient, still empty, still starving. And somewhere inside, at 3:33 every morning, the grandfather clock strikes 13, and the giggles begin again. Next story is Old Christian Grave. Jake Harlan gripped the steering wheel of his battered Jeep Wrangler, the engine rumbling like an old smoker's cough as he navigated the twisting back roads of West Virginia. The GPS had given up miles ago, signal lost in the shadow of the Appalachian ridges, but he'd scribbled directions on a crumpled napkin from the last diner he'd hit, some greasy spoon in a town called Elk River, population barely enough to fill a high school gym. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges, and the air through the cracked window carried the sharp tang of pine and damp earth. Jake was 28, with a scruffy beard that hid a boyish face and eyes that sparkled with the kind of skepticism that made for good content. His YouTube channel, Harlan's Haunts Debunked, had 150,000 subscribers, mostly thrill-seekers and armchair skeptics who tuned in to watch him dismantle ghost stories with logic, thermal cameras, and a healthy dose of sarcasm. He'd started it in college as a joke, busting dorm room poltergeists that turned out to be faulty wiring or prankster roommates. Now it paid the bills, barely, supplemented by Patreon perks like exclusive behind-the-scenes footage. This trip was supposed to be gold. Episode 47. West Virginia's Forgotten Witch Pit. He'd stumbled on the legend in a Reddit thread, Holy Rest Cemetery, tucked away in the foothills, abandoned since the 1850s. No fancy mausoleums or famous graves, just a patch of overgrown land where, according to folklore, women accused of everything from adultery to midwifery gone wrong were executed. And not burned as witches, that was Salem's gig, but hanged or stoned, then dumped in a communal pit behind a stone wall. The crosses were meant to pin their spirits down, keep the devil from rising. But the old-timers whispered that the devil wasn't the problem. It was the women, their grievances festering like untreated wounds. Jake didn't buy it. Ghosts? Curses? Please. He'd debunked a cursed lighthouse in Maine, turned out to be mold-induced hallucinations, and a haunted asylum in Ohio, echoes from bad plumbing. This was just bad history, patriarchal bullshit dressed up as supernatural dread. He'd film the site, poke around, explain it away with erosion, wind patterns, and psychological suggestion. Views would spike. Maybe he'd hit 200,000 subscribers. He pulled off the paved road onto a dirt track rutted with potholes from spring floods, and the Jeep bounced, his camera bag jostling in the passenger seat. Tripod, extra batteries, handheld GoPro, EMF meter for show, and a flask of cheap whiskey to ward off the chills. He chuckled at that, rehearsing his opener in the rearview mirror. Hey, haunt hunters. Jake here at Holy Rest Cemetery, where the only thing rising from the grave is your subscription count. No ghosts, just forgotten stories and some killer atmosphere. The track dead-ended at a rusted iron fence, leaning crookedly like it was trying to escape its own posts. Beyond it, field stones tilted at odd angles, half buried in briars and fallen pine needles. The trees loomed tall, their branches interlacing overhead, blocking out the fading light. Jake killed the engine, the sudden silence pressing in like a held breath. He grabbed his gear, slung the bag over his shoulder, and pushed through the gate. It squealed in protest, the sound echoing unnaturally far. The air inside felt different, thicker, colder, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. He shook it off, probably just the elevation drop. He trudged deeper, boots crunching on dead leaves, until he reached the back of the cemetery. There it was, the stone wall, crumbling and ivy-choked, and beyond it, a wide depression in the ground. The pit, unmarked, overgrown, but unmistakably unnatural. a shallow bowl where the earth dipped like a giant had scooped it out with a spoon. He set up his tripod near the wall, mounting the main camera for wide shots. The GoPro he clipped to his chest for POV footage. "All right, folks," he said, hitting record and flashing his trademark grin. "Welcome to the witch pit. Legend says this is where they buried the troublesome women, hanged them, stoned them, left them to rot. Crosses to keep them down. But let's be real. No ectoplasm, no orbs. Just soil and superstition." He stomped the edge of the pit for emphasis, the ground giving a solid thump under his boot. "See? Firm as—" A twig snapped behind him. He spun, heart skipping a beat. Nothing, just the wind rustling the pines. "Okay, editing that jump scare out," he muttered, laughing it off. But the laugh sounded forced, even to him. He spent the next hour exploring, narrating as he went. He filmed the tilted headstones, reading faded inscriptions aloud. Elizabeth Crowe, 1842 to 1859. Beloved wife. Mary Hale departed 1853. Simple names, simple lives, erased by time. And he explained how oral histories exaggerated, how witches were often just women who owned property or spoke their minds in a time when that got you killed. Rational, educational, content. As dusk deepened into night, he lit a small lantern for mood lighting. Moonlight filtered through the canopy in silvery shafts, casting long shadows that danced like fingers. He settled on a fallen log near the pit, pulling out his flask for a swig. The whiskey burned warm down his throat, chasing away the chill. "Time for the overnight challenge," he said to the camera. "I'll camp here till dawn, prove there's nothing." 11:47 p.m. The first cross flipped. It wasn't subtle. A weathered iron marker, maybe 2 feet tall, embedded in the soil near the wall. It jerked upright with a metallic groan, then slammed back down, inverted, and the point driving deep into the earth like a hammer from hell. The sound was shrill, grinding, impossible. Jake froze, flask midway to his lips. "What the—" He whipped around, GoPro capturing his wide-eyed stare. The camera's night vision kicked in, washing everything green. Then another cross, and another. 10 feet away, 20. A wave of them, flipping in sequence. Up, invert, stake, like dominoes defying gravity. The chorus of screeching metal echoed off the trees, building to a cacophony that set his teeth on edge. "Okay, prank, magnetism, earthquake?" His voice cracked, belying the bravado. He scanned the darkness, heart pounding. No one around, just him and the graves. Whispers started then, not from the air, from below, rising through the soil like steam from a kettle. Women's voices, overlapping, are cracked and parched. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want, except for blood." Laughter bubbled up next, wet, choking, like they were gargling mud and finding it hilarious. Jake backed up, foot sinking into the soft edge of the pit. Not mud. Something pulsed around his ankle, a rhythmic throb like a heartbeat in the earth. He yanked free with a gasp, boot coming loose with a suck of resistance. Vision slammed into him. Himself, throat slit ear to ear, blood spraying in an arc across the lens, body convulsing in the dirt. Timestamp, 2:14 a.m. tonight. He staggered, clutching his head. Hallucination, dehydration, low blood sugar. He fumbled for his backpack, grabbing a protein bar, chewing mechanically. Gotta be. But the whispers grew louder, morphing into chants. Psalms twisted to venomous. "He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, of thorns and broken glass." More laughter, closer. Jake grabbed the lantern, swinging it wide. In its beam, he saw them. pale hands clawing through the soil, fingernails splintered, caked in black earth. Then heads, tattered bonnets, faces rotted to bone, lips peeled back in skeletal grins. One figure rose fully, gaunt and shrouded in rags, milky eyes fixed on him. She pointed a bony finger. "Thou shalt not bear false witness." Her voice rasped like wind through dead leaves. "But thou hast. Now bear witness to thine end." Panic surged. Jake bolted, gear forgotten except the GoPro still strapped to his chest. He crashed through briars, thorns tearing at his jeans. The path twisted, the same crooked oak appearing again and again, like the cemetery was looping. A maze with no exit. Visions assaulted him with every step. Brushing a headstone, his mother's car mangled around a tree, her screams echoing in twisted metal. Another, his brother on the tile floor, overdose foam bubbling from blue lips. His own deaths, vivid and varied, drowning in the shallow creek behind the wall, water filling lungs like ice, hanging from the oak's branch, rope biting into neck, toes dangling futilely, burned in his sleeping bag by unseen flames, skin blistering screams his own, each one sharper, burrowing into his mind like hooks. Not imagination, memory, future memory. He clawed at the stone wall, scrambling up. It crumbled under his hands, dropping him back into the pit with a thud. The women advanced, slow, relentless, their forms flickering in the moonlight. Dozens now, rising from the earth, bonnets askew, our eyes glowing faintly. Their chant swelled, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for evil walks with me." Jake's mind raced. Flashbacks hit him unbidden. His childhood in Ohio, skeptical even then, dismissing his grandma's ghost stories as old lady nonsense. Starting the channel after his dad died suddenly, heart attack at 52. No afterlife, he'd told his mom, just gone. But now, doubt crept in like fog. He circled back to his setup, grabbing the tripod camera for a weapon, swung it wildly as hands grasped at his ankles. "Get off, this isn't real." 1:59 a.m. The ground split, a jagged crack racing across the pit like reverse lightning. Hands erupted everywhere, grabbing, pulling. Cold fingers locked around his wrists, belt, throat. He thrashed, kicking one apparition. Her head lolled back, exposing a noose scar, but she didn't release. Bones snapped. His, theirs, pain blurred. The GoPro tumbled, lens up recording, legs flailing, chants rising, wet cracks of yielding flesh. 2:14 a.m. A blade, cold, invisible, sliced across his throat. Blood poured, hot and sticky. Vision faded to black, the last whisper tender in his ear. "Welcome home, witness. Thy testimony is complete." Dawn broke gray and sluggish over the foothills. The jeep sat untouched at the track's end. No body in the cemetery. Crosses upright, fence straight, pit smooth as fresh-tilled soil. But at 6:03 a.m., the GoPro's auto-upload kicked in, beaming the file to the cloud. Subscribers woke to notifications. Episode 47, raw footage. Views exploded. Comments poured in. Fake AF. Best effects ever. Is Jake okay? Play it at night, though. Alone, lights off. Beneath the screams, the chants, your name, woven in soft threads. Patient. The grave remembers. It's waiting for your visit and testimony. 2 places, 1 house, 1 grave, both older than your bloodline, both still feeding. The walls chew slow, the soil shows no mercy. You can buy 4 walls, you can walk a cemetery path, but once they taste you, they never forget the flavor. Check your clock at 3:33. Watch the dirt under your feet after dark, because somewhere right now, something just whispered your name, and it's already smiling, The end. Sleep if you can.